with millions and millions of people each year cutting the cord, moving on to streaming services like Netflix, or having services like YouTube TV, PlayStation View, and there's a whole number of other ones that are pretty much cable services without the cable. So many people moving to those. The traditional cable and satellite TV providers are losing their collective minds. They don't know what exactly to do in response to this. It's really hurting their long-term future, and they're really struggling to to come up with a solution. I mean, what I'm assuming will happen, we've seen it with DirecTV, we've seen it with Dish, with Sling TV, is that they will eventually go digital. All of them. We'll have Comcast Digital, we'll have Optimum Digital. All of these traditional cable TV providers will all have a digital alternative to their traditional cable line service. Now, as far as cable is concerned, for at least the time being, I don't think it's going to go anywhere because there's still a good portion of the population that is technologically illiterate when it comes to using the internet, or not even using the internet, but having access to good internet that's capable of these streaming services like satellite internet, which is just completely, it'll eat up the bandwidth with easily, and it's just not sustainable for people who are subscribed to satellite internet, which is a fairly significant number of the population. Then you have people who are just not connected to the internet at all. You'd be alienating those people if you relied completely on streaming services. So at least I would say for another decade, at the very least, these traditional cable TV services and satellite ones too, like Dish Network and DirecTV, they're going to continue to have their traditional services, but eventually they're going to phase that out for a digital counterpart, for a digital version of that service, similar to PlayStation View and YouTube TV and all those other services. So, what does this mean for the future of the TV industry? It means that it's going to change, but at its core, it's not going to change. You're still going to have your, you pay X amount of dollars a month for a service, and you get to watch a number of channels, and you get a package. It's going to be the same, pretty much the same thing, except one key difference is that you don't have to worry about installations. You don't have to worry about all those other things, and competition is going to be very high because you're going to have all these different services like YouTube, PlayStation, and all DirecTV now. You already have a whole bunch of them. So when that becomes the standard, competition is going to be at an all-time high level. You're going to have competitive prices, more competitive than you've seen. You're going to have true, legit competition because before, there's certain cable providers that there's only one or two that service your area, and you're pretty much stuck with them, and it's pretty much take it or leave it, right? But with this becoming the norm now, you're going to have so much more competition. If, let's say, DirecTV now does something that you don't like, you have so many more other options, which incentivizes these companies to be less of the anti-consumer side, be more competitive, and try to please the customer more than they are right now. Right now, they don't give a shit. They don't have to give a shit at this current moment because, like I said, there are cable companies that only service one area, and you don't have a variety of competition at all in most areas in the country. All these companies, you have Optimum, you have Spectrum, you have so many of these cable companies, but very little of them actually compete with each other. Maybe two of them at most. Like in my old area, you had Optimum and you had Verizon. That was it. If you weren't happy with Verizon's service, Optimum was your only alternative, and vice versa. So the competition level was not really that high. So the rise of cord cutting, and that becoming the norm in the TV industry, which I think it will be within the next few years, 5 years, I think cord cutting, by 2023, I think cord cutting will become more prevalent than your traditional cable line. Now, why do I think that? Because as more people are realizing, oh, wait, I can just go on the internet and have a TV service that's just like the one I have right now, and it's pretty much the same, and it's cheaper in most cases. It's a better value in most cases, and more people are going to switch to that. If Netflix alone doesn't meet their needs, then a lot of people would just have Netflix and that's all they want. And Netflix is definitely a big component of this because Netflix has a whole bunch of subscribers. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, people use those kind of on-demand services, but the rise in these cord cutting services that pretty much function the same way as traditional cable companies. They pretty much are cable companies, except they're not actually cable. That's also going to see a huge increase, and those two will kind of coexist with one another. You'll have, because Netflix will have their exclusive shows, Hulu will have their exclusive shows, Amazon, of course, is Amazon. They're huge. They ain't going anywhere. They're only going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. They just keep expanding at a rapid rate. But as far as PlayStation View, YouTube TV, and those other services, Sling TV, they are going to see a huge boost in subscribers when people realize that these services are a better value to them than the other ones. You know, you just need internet. You don't need a landline. You could just use your cell phone, and you don't need anything else. You just need an internet connection, and that's it. For the people who don't have an internet connection, that option will be available to them, I believe. That will happen until the online infrastructure gets better over the years. More people have better internet connections. But as far as internet is, with ISPs, that's another concern I have. I can't predict it because I can't predict if a Republican or a Democrat is going to get into office. I assume if a Democrat gets into office, then perhaps net neutrality can be reinstated. And yes, I'm talking about net neutrality because, look, net neutrality is going to play a big role in not only the future of the internet, but the future of the TV industry, especially the future of the TV industry, because it's going digital. It's going all online. And you notice all of these different cable companies and these internet cable services like PlayStation View, but mostly internet service providers that provide internet to people also have an online cable service. Look at Google Fiber is a great example of this. Now I know Google Fiber doesn't serve all areas, and there's select cities, but let's say you live in that select city. I believe they serve Kansas City, San Francisco, a number of other cities. Houston, Texas, I believe. Chicago, I believe they also serve in select areas. So let's say you live in San Francisco then, and you are a Google Fiber subscriber. You have the Google Fiber internet service, and you love their service. They have great internet, and you have no interest going anywhere else. Their internet is super fast, and you have no complaints whatsoever about them, right? Okay. Well, then, what happens when you are looking for TV service and you look at YouTube TV and you're like, yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in it. Let's look at DirecTV Now, or let's look at one of those other services. I want to subscribe to one of those. So you subscribe to one of those, and you notice there's a lot of buffering and there's a lot of speed throttling, and you're just wondering, what's going on here? And most people wouldn't even realize that it's their own ISP that's purposefully throttling that service. I mean, Verizon tried to do it with Netflix when they tried to launch their Redbox Instant service. They did throttle Netflix's speeds until there was enough backlash for them not to do that, and eventually they got rid of that service, so it didn't matter in the long run. But you see, it's happened before, and it will happen again, especially when we see these companies rise, when we see the rise of digital TV services. So, yeah, that's net neutrality plays a big factor. It's a big puzzle piece to all this. If net neutrality remains repealed, then it will the future of the future of the TV industry, not only internet, but the TV industry is going to look somewhat grim. Competition will be stifled, probably even more than it is right now, and that's honestly the most exciting thing about cord cutting is the potential for having a better value for consumers and having greater competition. But if you have the speed throttling to try to incentivize you to subscribe to their service instead of a competition, because Google Fiber and YouTube TV are the same company. And like I said earlier, if the cord cutting thing really takes off, like I'm pretty sure it will be, I mean, it's pretty much a given, all the companies that offer traditional cable are going to get in on that and offer their own digital services. Like Spectrum, you're going to have a digital Spectrum, you're going to have a digital Optimum, etc., etc. So if you also have their internet, then you're fine. But if you have their internet and are more interested in a competitor's service, then they'll throttle your speeds or do some shady shit. I know they will, because they've tried to do it before, and with net neutrality being gone, they pretty much have free reign. I've seen a different prediction that all channels are going to have their separate subscription services, and you're going to have to pay for them separately, which I just don't see happening. No, the traditional model of paying one company a subscription, $40, $50 a month, is going to still be the model indefinitely, I believe. It's not going to be replaced by having to choose between, Disney and Nick and subscribing to them separately. That's not going to replace that model. It might complement it. We'll still have those services like HBO Go, separate from a cable subscription, or Disney having a subscription separate from that. But ultimately, people are going to go with the cable service, the subscription model of paying X amount a month for X amount of channels. They're not going to subscribe to a whole bunch of different channels at one time. That would just get too crazy, having all these subscriptions at once. It won't work for the TV industry, like it won't work for the internet, for having to pay for different websites at a time. It's just, no, because then people wouldn't go on certain websites. So I don't think that's going to be the future of the industry. People say that's the future. No, I think the traditional model, that's carried on to services like YouTube TV and PlayStation View and Sling TV, that's the way forward. But net neutrality is going to kind of be that wild card that might make things a little bit uncertain as to whether or not these changes will make the industry better or worse in the long run. But only time will tell, right?